So the whole point of launching a CubeSat in the first place is to do this more cost effectively than if we launched a huge multi-million-dollar satellite. Part of the way we do this is by doing a couple weird things with how it's launched. So we've got two options. You can either ride share with a big government mission, or you can find your own dedicated launcher. When you're ride sharing these big government missions, the rocket has excess payload capacity. Some of that can be used for a smaller mission, like a CubeSat. Now, a dedicated launcher, for instance, those offered by Rocket Lab and Vector Space to new-ish startups in the space industry, they offer you a specific rocket that will go into your own orbit, or you might be ride-shared with a few other smaller satellites, all of which are going to the same general destination.
The new option that's become available for microsatellites in recent years are dedicated launch providers. Now, microsatellites are atypical from normal satellites in that they're very, very small comparatively. They're usually anywhere from a couple kilograms to about 100 kilograms. For reference, that's about the size of a Coke bottle to about the size of a full-grown human adult male. This has been a relatively new industry on account of the fact that they've become much more popularized for commercial companies and for government agencies. Small satellites can do a lot. Launch providers saw this and said, okay, well, we can create dedicated new small satellites. These are usually about 9 to 10 meters tall, which is about the size of a 2-story to 3-story building. And they weigh anywhere from a small sedan to about a Hummer, which is to say up to about 2,600 kilograms. Two big agencies or companies that are becoming very, very prominent dedicated launches for microsatellites are JAXA, which is the Japanese space industry, by far is the coolest acronym I've ever heard of, and Vector Space Systems, which has their Vector rocket, which by far has the coolest paint job I've ever seen done on a rocket. They're pretty similar, the main difference being that the Vector can be 2 to 3 stages, while the SS520 is 3 exactly. And the SS520, which is JAXA's rocket, is actually solid fuel, whereas the Vector is liquid fuel. Obviously, one launches from Japan and one launches from the Americas, but both accomplish the same thing, which is getting about 60 kilograms into low Earth orbit. The main thing with these smaller rockets is that they are built on a smaller scale overall. The launch is smaller, the launch services are smaller, the launch equipment is smaller, the rocket is smaller, less fuel, the whole shebang. That is what helps make them economic for smaller satellites. They both accomplish this by different means, but the main thing is that they are introducing new technologies into the field of launch. For example, the Vector rocket is using 3D printed engine fuel injectors, which they developed in tandem with NASA, and 10 years ago would have been laughed out of any sort of reputable launch provider in the world. Now it's cutting edge technology that's helping cut down prices to much more affordable levels.
The other system for getting into space is a rideshare, which is basically like carpooling. Your main method of getting there is you buy a specific amount of space, and depending on the company you go through, you can either buy a specific amount of space on an unspecified date, so like eventually they'll have a rocket that's empty and needs extra stuff to go up, or you buy on a specific date, which Rocket Labs is a company that does that. And their prices are 50 to 90K for a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter cube, or the low price of 180 to 250K if you're doing 3 of those. So there are a couple of different types of rockets that can take you up. Generally speaking, rideshare is when there's a big rocket and they have like a little bit of extra room around the edges of whatever it is they're sending up. And you can buy space to put a tiny CubeSat in there, and they sell space like that. And so that's stuff like the Falcon Heavy, the Space Launch System, big rockets. You can also do small satellites where basically they have 1 or 2 dedicated items that they're taking up, like a big weather satellite, a couple of boxes, stuff like that. And then they sell the rest of the space as like a big chunk, and you can buy smaller portions of that for tiny satellites. For instance, back in 2017, they had the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, which was an Indian rocket that went up and took 104 CubeSats at once, which is, I think, the most that's ever been launched in one go before. And that was a smaller rocket. You can also win space on a launch. Like the SLS is sending 13 CubeSats in one of its newer missions. It's going up to about the moon and sending out 13 CubeSats. One of them is going to an asteroid using a solar sail, so that's pretty cool. Finally, regardless of which rocket you wind up taking, you have the option of going to the ISS first and deploying your satellite from there. This has a couple of advantages. Firstly, it's cooler. Secondly, people on the ISS can like check your satellite to make sure it's all in one piece before they send it off, which is kind of a problem with most other launches. You know, it gets rattled around on its way up and then they just kind of shove it out the airlock and hope for the best. There's also fewer requirements because what they do when they're sending stuff to the ISS is they pack it in a soft foam bag, so it's not rattled around as much, and the requirements for that are a lot less strict, which is really useful if you're a college student and don't have all the aerospace tech that, say, NASA has. Lastly, when you launch to the ISS, what happens is after they check your satellite to make sure that it's working, they will launch it using the JEMRM, which is basically the Canadarm, but with a t-shirt gun on the end of it, which is incredibly cool. And it allows you to choose your attitude, which you can't always choose when you're going up in a rocket. So those are the added advantages of going to the ISS first.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria. I'm the Outreach Director of SEDS. I'm a third-year aerospace engineering student here at RPI. Thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe and share it with everyone you know.